Hello and welcome to the Geek on My Sleeve channel. And we are going to be doing a spoiler-free book review of The Way of Shadows. It is part of the Night Angel trilogy. This is the first book. Author is Brent Weeks, and Paul Behemer is the narrator, and it is a Tantor audio for the publisher. We are counting this towards our 52 book challenge. If you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. Now we're going to go to John for a overview or synopsis of the book.
So, as far as the synopsis is concerned, the story is based in, I guess what you could call like an olden type English time frame. Castles. There's no electricity. The main weapons are pretty much like bows, arrows, and swords. However, the fighting is centered around assassinations, fighting from the shadows. So, if you're a big fan of like Assassin's Creed, this book is fairly similar in terms of action and how to track your target. As the book, as you continue reading with the book, you will definitely come to enjoy the writing style as he continues with action and character development and history that you read within the series. And of course, what else to make a fantasy series than to add some magic there as well.
Alrighty, and that is the synopsis of the book. Thank you, John. So for our age rating, I would put it at M for mature, kind of following game logic, and that's because of the graphic content. Um, yeah, very mature scene. No questions about it. There's killing, rape, so on and so forth.
Like when it comes to those things, it's not like he goes into great detail. Like he's not explaining, like, of course, with rape, like he's not going into the details of the actual action that's happening. But leading up to that point where you can, like, the next thing that happens, like, okay, this guy is definitely going to get raped, that kind of thing. That's where that rating, like this, the graphic details leading up to it.
Yeah, it's implied, not described. Audio length is 21 hours 4 minutes, so it is a long one. It is definitely up there. For the page length, it is 659 pages. Now into the review portion. Out of 5 stars, how would you rate the world building?
The world building I would put at 5 stars, and the reason why I put it at 5 stars is mainly because I've read all three books, so I know exactly where he's coming from and like what exactly is being put into this first book here to build up to the rest of the series. But I would say the effort put into this first book definitely plays a part uh, with how you interpret the messages and the storylines brought in with the rest of the book.
Okay. So for me, with it being my first pass and this being the only book in the series that I've seen, I'd put it a little lower. I would give it a 3.5 or kind of a 4 because there is a lot of elements of the world that you get introduced to. So you get to see them, but I didn't feel like any one part we had like a deep dive in. So there's a lot of the world we get experience with, but it wasn't in great detail, which makes sense. It's kind of an origin or, to set it up for continuing books. So moving on to character development, out of 5 stars, how would you rate the overall character development?
I'm actually going to rate it a little bit lower, even though he introduces a lot of characters in this first book. There's a lot of characters that you read that you go through in the next couple books that you see snippets up here of the on the first book, but you really wish that there was just more content with those characters. So I'm actually going to place this at a 4 out of 5 for my rating for the character development.
Right on. So for me on this, it's kind of weird because I would put, if you said the main characters, I'd put it at a 4. But for some of the characters that had critical roles throughout it, but they're kind of side characters, I'd put it at a 3 because, like John said, you get a snippet, but you don't really feel like you know them. Where the main characters, you get a good kind of moral compass for what they would do in select situations, and the side characters that are quite involved throughout the story, you get little snapshots. So alrighty. And then for the writing style, out of 5 stars.
This one's a little difficult for me because I don't read as much as like you or some other people that I know. I've only read a few books, and as far as the writing style, obviously no one's perfect, but I would probably give it about a 4, 4.5. Because I feel like there are some parts that definitely could use some work, such as like the transitions. It's very difficult to follow. Moving from like one scenario to another, it doesn't really come out and say, "Hey, we're moving," so reset your mind for this scenario. It's just kind of implied as like you continue reading, and you're like, "Oh," you're like a couple paragraphs in, you're like, "Oh, we're with someone else now." All right.
Very much the same. I would have put it at a 3 just because it was very hard to track. Kind of like you were saying, you're in the middle of a situation, something where something's going down, we're involved in it, and you don't really know that it's transitioned to a different scene until he's getting into more detail and describing what's happening in the scene. So I had a lot of those like not exactly deja vu, but deja vu moments where I was like, "Wait, what? Where are we?" Which brings us into foreshadowing. Out of 5 stars, how would you put the foreshadowing elements of the book?
I would definitely. I think this book series is all about foreshadowing, and I would definitely place it like 4.5 to 5 stars. Just because, like, as far as like it, foreshadowing just pretty much occurs right from the beginning of the book. Once you start really getting to know who the main character is, like as soon as you know who he is, like foreshadowing just starts occurring. You don't really know it's happening until like you're in the middle to like mid late of the book, but it's always occurring, mostly because of this not the writing style, but I think it's mostly because of where the story's taking place and what kind of style, uh, like combat wise, I guess. You don't really like because he's like an assassin ish kind of character. Uh, you would figure it's not like all guns a blazing, go in and start shooting everyone you see. It's like always move behind the scenes, thinking before you make a move, kind of deal. So yeah, like 4, 4.5 for sure.
Right on. Yeah, I'd actually put this at a 5, and because that is the whole book. And kind of, I rated the writing style lower because of the transitions, but then the writing style is almost higher because of the foreshadowing. And that's where I struggled because I made it about halfway through the book and then I was so confused. I actually reread the first half of the book trying to figure stuff out. I would not advise that. Honestly, I would advise just going all the way through the book. And for as much confusion as there is, it wraps up or connects several dots very well. So that's where the foreshadowing, it being a first book and it trying to set the foundation and develop for the other books, it's pretty typical. But then with the transitions from scene to scene, it's kind of hard to follow until the end of the book. I would advise the ending of the book is the best part. Like, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of questions get answered at the end. Not all of them, of course, because there's still 2 more books to read. But a lot of questions that you had at the beginning of the book get answered at the end.
Yep. And then so now we're down to final thoughts. Are we doing a Geek Out stream? Yes, no, maybe. Yes, we've already done one. So we'll be linking a card up in the top. And apparently I decided to skip over overall. Um, Overall rating of the book out of 5 stars.
I would rate it overall. I mean, I don't know the fact that I'm on my 3rd read through now. It said that's how what it says right there. But I obviously rereadability is high up there, and definitely I would just give it a 5 for sure overall.
And then for me overall, I'd put it probably like a 3.5, 4, because it was so hard to track. But for if you know with this channel, we do a lot of rereads and read it multiple times to kind of catch the nuances and the foreshadowing. But this whole book is foreshadowing. So yeah, I enjoyed it after we got to like the final fourth of the book and it really all like made the rest of it make sense, and there's a high readability because there's just so much going on and it is a longer book. But yeah, overall I would do a 3.5 to 4.
Like in terms of like other books, the climax of the story isn't what you would consider most climaxes to be. Like where everything just kind of converges and like a giant scene happens because of what's going on within the story. It's instead it just comes out and as Pete said, it's like all your questions pretty much gets answered instead of that huge climax scene.